Live?
Yes, we're live.
Oh, okay. So, hello and welcome to Doctors and Coaches Corner. We're really glad that you're here. Tonight, we're going to be talking about time management for young people. And sometimes we think of time management as being a grown up or an adult concern. But I think that we also need to start working with young people so they can manage their time as well, because many of them are highly scheduled, right? And so they need to know what they can take on. So that's what we're going to be talking tonight. If you are with us live and you can put your name and a way for us to contact you, we will have some information to send to you about time management, some tricks of the trade, and we'll email those to you tomorrow. So if you put your email address in the chat box so that we can do that. So I'm the doctor. My name is Cindy, and I will turn you. This is Brett, and he can tell you that he's the coach.
Hi guys. Yeah, this topic of time management. First of all, I don't love the way that it's worked, right? Like, how can you manage time? We all have 24 hours, right? We all have 60 seconds. We all have, and I know that I when I talk to the leadership groups that we work with, we all crack up and laugh about it because we all know what it really means, right? How are you more efficient, or how do you cram more things in, or how do you prioritize and get what's most important in this time frame, right? And we call it sacred time, or different things of that nature. But anyway, I don't love the topic name, but I do like talking about the topic itself.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that. So, Robert, do we have a question?
Yes, so first question is, why is time management important for youth?
When I think about my grandchildren, my youngest grandchildren, my oldest ones manage their own time, they're adults. But with the youngest ones, they are highly scheduled. They have the school day, right? But then beyond that school day, they have homework. And beyond homework, they have gymnastics, or they have soccer, or they have dot, 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 right? And then they have family time. And then they have seeing grandparents. They have all of those things going on. And I think that one of the things that's important about time management is that for kids, is that we allow them to go and take a breath, because they're on a treadmill all the time. Now, my youngest grandchildren are in elementary school. So at least during the school day, they have one teacher who is looking out for them for the whole day, right? And is trying to manage that and help them manage that. But think about your child when they get to junior high. You have 6 periods in a day, and every single teacher wants 100% of your time. So, how do you manage that and be able to do some self care as well, and to get your homework done, meet your obligations, and then do the other things that you want to do after school, which could be anything from sports to and drill team and those kinds of things, to being able to practice cooking. So I think that it's important to help young people realize that they can be over scheduled, that they can be so scheduled and have so much to do that they can't really do anything well. So that's why I think it's important for young people, so that they can say, hey, I need a timeout here. So I'll push that to you, Brett.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is good for me. It fits into my black and white personality. I love the schedule and being regimented and all those things. And also, I think it's terrible for kids in a lot of ways, which you just alluded to. So I think it's a both and situation. And so I think that being able to have a schedule would help for discipline and responsibility and accountability. Those are the great things, right? But as you mentioned, you just named five, six, seven things where it's not so great. I think on the positive side, it can also help with academic performance, right? I think also that when you're trying to balance school and extracurricular activities and so on and so forth. So it's a tough one, right? And for those of you that can't see my hands, one saying stop, 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 and the other one saying come forward. And so I see that kind of both ways, so to speak. So for me, I love being busy. I love being in the mix. I love getting as much done as I can. I love squeezing blood out of a turnip, so to speak. So for me, love time management. My wife, she's a little bit more chilled, and I'll ask her like, in the morning, what do we have for dinner? She's like, I don't know, right? Where she's just chilled about it. So I think it's finding your own personal style and what's best. But I do think that we at least need to introduce it to kids and let them know that managing their time can be important overall.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. So, Robert, is there another question?
Next question is, how can I teach youth to prioritize task effectively?
Prioritizing isn't easy for adults either, but there's more than one way to prioritize. And I think you have to be able to be flexible in that rather than just prioritizing one particular way. So one of the ways that you prioritize would be something that's urgent. It has to be done and the deadline is coming and you would need to do that. Another way, though, you might want to prioritize is, are you being are you stopping somebody else from getting their stuff done? And so then you might want to take that on first because you don't want to keep somebody else from getting their tasks done. Another way that you can do it is, and there are some days that this is important for me. You have a lot, and maybe you've had 3 or 4 days where you've just been going as fast as you can go. Well, maybe you need to take a breath. And so you're going to prioritize by what's easiest and what can I get off the list? It's been there for a long time. And so it's not bad to prioritize in different ways that make sense to you, but you just need to know that you're doing that. So instead of prioritizing your list and starting with number 4, which is not a good plan for anybody, prioritize the list differently, having a different criteria for how you're prioritizing. And then maybe you get to do number 4 first because it's first on the list. So I think that it's about that. And I think that there's time management, certainly, which is helped by prioritizing, but there's also a time savings thing that you can do. So if you have 2 things on your list that feed together, right, the one will lead to the other, you can probably save time by not separating them. Because if you separate them, then you're going to have to go back and rethink your position all over again. What was I thinking when I made this decision? But if you do them in proximity to one another, then I think that you can then also manifest a time saving because you don't have to repeat the process. So those would be things that I would say to help look at time. Know that you can prioritize, but you can have different criteria for that prioritization. Just be aware of how you're doing it.
Yeah, I like that. There's a lot of things I can say. I'll start by talking about on YouTube, they have a short, and there's 2 kids, and they have these little cones that are spread out like over 20 feet. And, let's say there's 7 cones every 3 feet or something like that. And what they find out is that the kid that grabs the cone first and then puts it back in their circle and then goes to the next one versus the person that goes all the way to the end first. So at first, the person that's getting the cones, they're kicking the other kid's tail. But at the end, that's not the case. And always the one that goes after the tough ones first are the ones that are furthest away or seem the most difficult. Then they come back. Now, there's a physical element to that. So just getting tired would be a little bit tough at the end. So that is one way to look at it. Instead of going easy to hard, you can go hard to easy. Another way I like to say that is what I talk to them about when prioritizing is a fruit tree. So, everybody goes, oh, go get the low-hanging fruit first. I like that, but I say, let's go get the grounded fruit first, because the grounded fruit is going to spoil if we don't get it and eat it. And that, again, that could be something that's easy. It could be something that you just talked about where it goes hand in glove with something else, or shoe and foot. So I'm going to go grab both of these right here because they're side by side. and then I'm going to go to the low hanging, then the mid hanging, and then all the way to the top. But other times it's like, you know what? I do my best work in the morning. So I'm going to climb that ladder and I'm going to go all the way to the top, and it's going to be more difficult, but I'm going to handle all those things. And then when I'm, extremely tired, who cares? I can just go grab these ones that are on the ground. So I think that that's two ways to look at it. Now, the way I look at it is very simple. I look at it and say, what am I trying to accomplish? What is my goal? What is my objective? What's the bottom line here? And then I reverse engineer that and I say, okay, this is how I will prioritize that. So I say, hey, if the only thing that I get done today is this, then so be it. And then I'll go to the next one and so on and so forth. So, I mean, look, there's a variety of ways to be able to prioritize these tasks. The key is that they prioritize. Last thing I'll say, I know it's long-winded, but the other thing that I do is what I call sacred time. And during that sacred time, I only do the most important things for the business. Or in my personal life, I say I'm only going to do the most important things. Spend time with my wife or spend time with God or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of ways to skin that cat, so to speak. You need to pick one, try it out, see if it works. If that doesn't work, go to another one until you find where that lane's out for you.
Good advice to find your own lane, I think makes sense. Okay, Robert, you're up.
Yes, I have a question. This from one of our viewers, and he asked, "How how can we support students in creating realistic daily or weekly schedules?"
So for me, one of the first things that we do to help kids learn how to create a schedule for themselves is to talk through the schedule we make for ourselves. That's called metacognition. And you make certain decisions about how you're going to spend your day, what time you're going to get up, what you're going to do first, second, third. You prioritize, and if you're in school, you would talk about that. So I think that by sharing with them how you set up a schedule and modeling that for them and then interacting with them. So if you're going to build a schedule for you, what would you put down first? What are you going to do first so that they can actually try it out and see how it could be accomplished? And then if you have found that you've made a big mistake, right? One of the things that I find for me is that I try and schedule every minute of my day. And if I do that, something will come up. It will take longer than I expected. And then I'm frustrated by that. So maybe you also want to talk to them about building in some time for them to take a breath. So let's say that you know that a task is going to take, you believe that it's going to take about 30 minutes. But if you will allocate for yourself 45 or 50 minutes, then if something it doesn't go well, or you get interrupted, you're not behind. So I think that scheduling is important. And I think what you're looking for is harmony in that schedule. And harmony would mean time for you to take a breath, time to just relax, for just, even if it's for 5 minutes, and then move on to the next thing. I don't know about you, but if you've ever gone through a drive-through, a lot of times they will say to you, "Are you planning to eat in your car?" And I find myself saying, well, the only way it'll be lunch is if I'm eating it in my car, right? Because that's what I do. But maybe that's not the best thing for me to do. So I need to put some time in there so that I could actually have lunch. So I think that a young person's school schedule will be very clear for them because they know what they're doing. But it's then talking about what we do after that. Are you going to start with homework? Do you need a break? What needs to happen there? Some kids need to do the homework right away, and so they put that in their schedule. Others need to do it after they've had a chance to take a breath and do some other things. So I think in helping them to schedule, you need to walk them through and talk through using metacognition about what you think about when you're making your own schedule.
Yeah, so it was funny when you said harmony because that's one of the things that I had written down just as you were talking on how to answer that question. And so we've talked about that before, that most people talk about balance. And I think that's not true. I don't think life is about balance. I think life's about harmony, right? And so sometimes, if we're using an orchestra to kind of use that as a touch point, and that's where I would start with kids. Go back to where meet them where they're at. Think about the best teacher of all time was Jesus in my book, and whatever your book is, so be it. But what they would do is they would go meet them where they're at. So within their schedule, I would find out what is their prior knowledge. So I'm going to state the objective and say, hey, today we're going to talk about scheduling. What do you know about that? And so they're going to say whatever they're going to say. Then you're going to teach them what you do or things that they could do. And I like to be able to do that in touch points, going back to harmony. So I say, look, sometimes remember, if you have a math test and you didn't do a good job of studying it the 3 nights before, then you're going to have to cram. And that would be like what? A trumpet. And then you talk to them because most of them have had some kind of music class or chorus or band or something. And say, like sometimes the trumpets are really playing. Well, that's you. You better get on it and really study with that schedule. You better put a block of time in there so you can study. And that's like the trumpets going crazy. Or maybe the next day it's you have a physical fitness test or whatever. You can talk to them about all those things, but trying to meet them where they're at and what would be their daily, talking about prior knowledge and so on and so forth. The other thing I like to do is use, like we would do a scheduling that would be like a time block, right? So we would say, okay, from 9 to 10, we're going to do such and such. Well, I like to do with them is do a time block, but do it with hats and say, hey, let's talk about what's the first hat that you put on in the morning. They're looking at you like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. You say, well, you're putting on your readiness hat. And they're like, what do you mean? And so you explain it to them. Well, don't you have to brush your teeth, take a shower, use the restroom, kiss your mom, whatever? That's your readiness hat. Okay, now what's the next hat? And you would say, how long does that take? Oh, that usually takes about 30 minutes. Okay, there's your first block with your first hat. Then you go to the second block, so on and so forth, to where they're putting on different hats. We do that in our own business. So Robert will be the first to tell you he's got 10 different hats that he wears in a day. We call them positions, right? So he'll put on his eclectic Eddie hat, which means that he has these 4 things that he has to get done. Then he'll put on his auctioneer hat. He'll put on his posted poster hat. And so I think that if we do hats, and when you bring hats in with them, right, you got to watch it with lights and stuff. But when you bring in hats and you're putting on the hat, it gives them that good visual representation as well. So I think that it's really meeting them where they're at, talking to them in touch points, and then breaking down what you would do as a schedule and then modifying that based off of their age.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, and thank you for the question. We really appreciate that because what we'd like for this to be is meaningful for you. And so we have FAQs, frequently asked questions, that we get when we're out and about and working with folks. But that doesn't mean that we'll hit the one that you really want to hear. So thank you so much for asking that. I really appreciate that. So Robert,
Yes.
you're up.
Yes. The next question is, what are effective tools for helping youth plan their schedules?
Well, a calendar comes to mind, right? I know that for me, I have an online calendar. I have a calendar in my phone. I have a calendar that's physical that I can touch and see and write in every day. I only do that in pencil because I have to erase so often. Then I make every day. Then I make a 2 week calendar and just hit the highlights so that I can see in case somebody calls and says, "Hey, could we work in a time?" And then I do a daily one. So obviously, that takes a calendar of some sort to be able to work with. I'm not saying that that's the right thing, but I think that if a child has or a young person has uh, Boy Scouts on Wednesday night then they would want that on a calendar so they didn't plan 10 other things on Wednesday night. So I think a calendar is helpful, and there are plenty of free calendars that you can print for them. And I don't know that they have to go months and months or weeks and weeks in advance, but if they could start to lay out the big pieces, I think that that's helpful for them. And then I think another tool is if they have a phone already, which they may have, is to how to give themselves an alert. Okay, I know that this afternoon I need to be ready to go and get my hair cut at 4:30. Then you would want to set the alert on your phone to give you an alarm at, say, 4:20, so that you would have time to do that. So a lot of kids, not the youngest ones, but a lot of kids do have phones. And so I would work with them on using that phone as a tool to help them with their schedule. But like I said, I am a firm believer. For me, if I can work it through on paper first and erase and move around and all those things, that works for me.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that may not work for them as well as their phone.
Well, I was laughing because I thought you were going to say, yeah, I take out stone and I chisel out my task and to-do list and my schedule. And I'm not, I'm probably worse than you are on it. But I was, thinking about all the paper stuff, right? Like you have your appointment book that, you can buy at Walmart for $20 that has schedules and all that stuff. But I'll try to get caught up in 2025. So I think that there's a lot of, gamification type stuff. I think there's a lot of apps out there. I don't know all those because I still do old school paper, or I etch it in stone or whatever. But I know that there is, there's Calendly and Google Calendar and Trello and all that. But I also think that there's like Todoist. I think there's an app out there that's something like that, or another one that's Habitica or something. So I think that they can look at apps, and most of them, like you said, even if they're real young, they have their phone and they can just be able to download that. And then they're kind of, it's built-in schedules. We talked about the block schedule, where it can say, Sunday through Saturday, going, on the top, and then going down, you can have the time frames. Then they can just plug in whatever. But again, it's what's great for you. I know for me, I talk about task and to-do lists, and I type mine up because I seem to have more tasks and to-dos that come on my list, and I get them off in a day because, all the businesses and stuff that we do. But other people, not GMA, but somebody else, not the doctor, like I said, she likes to cross that thing off. So she has to, if she prints it, but she likes to write it even better. Again, I think it's whatever is going to work for the youth or the kids. And primarily, I think they're going to want to gamify it, use apps or downloads from their phone or different things of that nature that will help them to ultimately be able to plan their schedules.
Yes, for sure. Visual, auditory, and probably kinesthetic, the three ways that we learn best, can certainly apply to time management. So, Robert, we're up for a question.
Yes, the next question is, how can I encourage youth to set realistic goals?
The question would be, do any of us set realistic goals, right? I mean, I think that that's part of it. So you can go through a process called a SMART goal, and you can go through that process, and it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, it's all those things. You can do that, I think. But I also think it's important for kids to know that there's a difference between a goal and an objective. So I might, if I were a senior in high school, my ultimate goal for the year will be to graduate. And that will be important to me. And then I can back up and I would need to say, well, I'll need to get these 2 courses done second semester, right? And so I could calendar out that way by beginning with the end in mind. So I think that that's possible. And I think that it's, you've got to have a goal that's a big picture, and an objective is a much smaller piece. So I think that there's a goal that says at the end of the year, I want to do this. And then there are objectives to meet your grades first quarter, second quarter, first semester, however you want to do that. Or it could be that you find a job, or that you take a college class if you're in high school, whatever those objectives are. And then you can develop strategies about how will you get that done, and then the tactics you'll use to actually do it. And so I think that a lot of times we get goals confused with objectives, because objectives are much smaller. So I could have a goal for the end of the year, and then I could have multiple objectives that I need to meet during the year so that my end goal can be met. So I would just give them opportunities to set them, and they'll probably set them reasonably short to begin with, and that's okay. And then see if they'll extend it. Okay, you made a goal for the end of this week. Can you now make one for 2 weeks? Can you pull it to 3? Can you pull it to 4? So that they get the idea of that big picture thinking.
Yeah, so, depending on what kind of youth you're talking with, what I do is I start with what's important to them, and they'll, look at you like you're crazy, and then I break it down into 5 sections, right? And so try to identify the goal first. And so if you're in a, non-pre-K, K-12 world or after school world, but you're at home or whatever, you can start with spiritual religion. If you're at a school system where you can't talk about that stuff, I just say mindset. Is there something that you can pick that you're really wanting to accomplish? And then, they can go through whatever that is. And then we go to the second one. Is there any kind of goal that you want with family and friends? And then you go to the next one with health, physical. You want to set a mental or an emotional or a physical goal, right? And then you go through the next one, which I call personal, social. Maybe it's a goal to, go climb Everest. I don't recommend that. I saw a movie on that the other day, but maybe that's your goal, right? And then you go to the last one, which would be your career or your material goals, which to them, what is their career, school. So that's a way to be able to kind of give them section by section. Because remember, inch by inch is a cinch, mile by mile takes a while. So if you just break it down by section, so then they've identified 1 goal or 2 goals or 5 goals or whatever it is, 1 in each area. The older they get, they may do 2 or 3 in each area. Maybe if they're real young, you just pick one of the areas and see what they can come up with 1 goal, so to speak. So then you say, okay, here's the goal. And then just like Gma was saying, what I do is what I call a Bayou blueprint. And I say, okay, if this is my goal, right? So let's say it's weight loss. So let's say that my goal is to get to 200 pounds. Then what I do is I say, what is my starting point? Well, the starting point is 200. And then if you look at it like a diamond, like a baseball diamond, home plate, then you've got first and third, and you have second base. So at second base, what you're going to do are these benchmarks. And GMA called them something different, but they're the exact same thing, right? You can say these are the objectives to get to the ultimate goal. And so you do those with time frames, and you say, okay, in 7 days, I want to lose 2 pounds, and 14 days, whatever, right? And you go through that. And then you have the blueprint. Well, how will you do that? And then break it down. Well, I need to sleep 8 hours. I need to drink 100 ounces of water. I need to, whatever that is. And then what you do is each time that you get to that benchmark and you're where your goal's at, they continue with the blueprint. If not, then you have to change the blueprint a little bit or whatever the case may be. So when you talk about realistic goals, look, I'm not going to put any restrictions on anybody's goal. People, have said to me, I want to be a professional athlete. Great. Well, what do you think that's going to take? Well, I think I can work out an hour a day. I'm like, no, that's 3 to 4 or 5 hours a day, a half a dozen days a week. And you've got to stay focused to be a professional athlete. And on top of that, you have to have some extreme talent. So when we talk about this word realistic, I don't want to damper what they're saying, but in the same breath, if I'm 2 foot tall and I want to high jump 9 feet tall, and nobody's ever done that in the history of the world, that were, 6'5" and can jump out of the gym, then I may want to be able to taper that, help them to taper that. But I'm never going to say never, because I think that the human mind can have them do whatever they want to do. It may just take a long time. So I think that the last thing I'd say on that is the positive reinforcement for each of the benchmarks that they hit, or maybe it's even each of the activities, even if they don't actually hit the benchmarks. I think that when they're really young, that we're going to praise them no matter what. So my kids, when they were my personal kids, when they were 7 and 8 months, man, I was going crazy the first step they took. Well, now I could care less. They run, they're 28 and 23. They run all over the place. So, but a realistic goal isn't that they're going to go sprint a marathon, but a realistic goal is that they can take one step. And so take the one step and then adjust from there.
I appreciate that. I do want to add this. So when you set a goal, you can either espouse that or you can have it be an aspiration. If you espouse it, what you're going to do is talk about it. That's it. You're going to talk about it, how you really want to get it done, but you're actually not going to do anything. If you have it be an aspiration, it means that you have to take action towards that. And so I think when you work with kids and about goals, you need to be sure they understand this isn't, if you say that that's your goal, then you must be ready to take action to reach it.
Hey, one more thing I want to say when you just mentioned that, I wanted to mention, I heard this one-liner that I thought was really good. A dream is something that's in your head. A goal is when you write it down. And I thought that's really good, right? And then a realistic goal, again, I don't like that terminology, because what's realistic today may not be realistic tomorrow. Pretty sure 100 years ago, they thought we would never get to the moon, right? Nobody'd ever run under 4-minute mile. Nobody would whatever. So I say dream big, and then if the goal doesn't there, keep striving for it. Maybe you adjust or you don't, but I'm not a big fan of realistic goals. They're all realistic. If they're in your mind, it's possible.
Thank you. Yeah. Robert, you have another question?
Yes, my next question is, what role do deadlines play in developing time management skills?
If there's no, so I'm not a big fan of deadlines, although I have them all the time. But if there's no deadline, then there's no urgency in what you're doing. And I think that there has to be a little bit of urgency, and maybe it's your desire to get it finished. But otherwise, you can just continually put it off, put it off, put it off, put it off, because you haven't really owned it as an aspiration. You are still in the espousal stage where you're going, yeah, no, I'll get to it. So I think that when you set a deadline, and even if you just set it for yourself, right, I'm going to get this done by this time, then what you want to do is work toward that. And so that you believe that it needs to be done. Then there are those things which happen, like the math test on Friday, and that is a deadline. There's no wiggle room. Somebody else set that deadline for you. And if what you want is to get a good grade on the test, then you're going to have to do your part, which is to study and pay attention to that. And that would make you adjust your schedule, as Brett mentioned earlier. So I think deadlines help focus you, even if the deadline is 6 weeks from now or 6 months from now. But it's there, and you know that it's there, and you're working toward it. And I think that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, this is music to my ears, because it's one of my favorite words in the English language, deadlines and or time frames, right? So to me, I love the deadlines. And I know that for me, when I'm under the gun a little bit, I do my best work, because I'm going to stay a lot more focused. If I know I have something that needs to get done in 3 weeks, then I'll still do it to try to get ahead. But I'm not doing it like let's say oh my goodness, I got to prepare for a training. Now I always do it, beforehand. But let's just say, even in the last, leading up to the last few hours, man, I got a deadline. I've got to get this done. I've got to, to me, my brain is on go, right? The endorphins are flying, so to speak, in there. So to me, I find that I do some of my best work when I know there's a deadline and then even a time frame. But usually, what I'll do is double it, right? I'll cheat to myself. I'll trick myself by saying, "Oh, dude, you only got one. You only have an hour to get this done when I really have 4 hours." But in my brain, I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to get it done in an hour," because our brain just fires a lot faster. But again, I think it depends on what type of person that you are. If I put that same, time frame and deadline on my wife, she wouldn't respond very good to it. So I know, like in our organization, what we'll do is we'll say, "Hey, set your own time frames and deadlines," and then if the leader or the overseer thinks that those time frames are off, then we'll challenge them. Same thing we would do in class, right? So we say, okay, the objective is we're going to go from mathematics during this transition, and we're going to line up to go outside. So you ask them what are the important things, and they say these 5 things or whatever. Okay, what's the time frame? Well, 30 seconds, right? That sounds reasonable to me. Are we all in agreement? Yes. Okay. Boom. We're going to start the time. And then you can see them. They're kind of lounging around, so to speak. And then you get to that countdown. Okay, we got to all be ready to go in 5, 4. Boy, everybody's, and they're there, right? So I really like time frames and I really like deadlines, but I think there's a time and place for both. And I think it also depends on the person. Are they going to rise to the occasion because they like that, or will it actually make them falter?
For sure. That's all part of what you said earlier about meeting them where they are, right? And understanding. So, Robert, do you have another question?
Yes, my next question is, how can I teach youth to avoid procrastination?
Oh, procrastination can is such a it is such a big mess maker. I don't know how to describe it. When we wait to the last minute, then the pressure that we feel is intense. So, for those, I think probably everybody listening to here is going to have to complete an income tax return by April 15th. And if it's April 14th and that's not done because you procrastinated, you're going to be, yes, it's going to be awful for you. And so I was grateful, and I felt like at this, it was late. I was grateful that mine went in yesterday on March 31st, right? Because the further you push to the deadline of something because you've procrastinated, the less likely you are to get it done well, to get it done right, to get it done with any help from anybody else who's already on their own set of deadlines. So I think that procrastination, certainly we all do it, but I think we have to call people on that or point it out to them, because it's not like what you need to get done goes away. It doesn't disappear. If you need to do the laundry, you're going to need to do the laundry. And you can push it off till tomorrow or the next day or the next day. And all that's going to happen is that the need is going to increase, and the pressure you feel, you don't have any wiggle room in there to go, okay, I can take a breath here. So I think we all probably procrastinate, especially when it's something that we really don't want to do. But by the same token, it's important that we try and stop that tendency and finding 27 little tiny things to do instead of the one big thing you need to do. So I'll leave that to you, Brett.
Speak for yourself, sister. I do not procrastinate, not very often. I can't think of times that I do. I'm sure that we all do. So just a couple little tricks that I like to do is I have a 2-minute rule. Hey, if you can get it done in 2 minutes, go do it. Go knock it out, right? It's kind of like running the parallel with grounded fruit. It's easy to just grab the fruit on the ground and put it in the basket. So anything that's under the 2 minute rule. The other thing is we have, like I say, sacred time. It's the most important thing that you have to get done on a regular and daily basis, what I would call your routine, or we call it continuous. And so some people have 90 minutes, some people have 90 seconds, some people have 9 hours, not really. But, it could be 90 minutes to 3 hours where you're just going to put your blinders on. So I've been watching this Netflix, it's called Wildfire. And it's about a little gal who was in jail younger, and she got out, and now she's a jockey. And part of what got her on the straight and narrow is they went to this equestrian like type farm, and she was really liking it. Well, what do they do when they're racing? Why do they put the blinders on the horses? Why? Because they can get distracted real easy. I mean, these are thoroughbreds, right? So what you want to do is keep them in a straight line moving forward. So I'll also talk to them about that and say, show them pictures of the blinders so that we don't get distracted. Get real focused during this 90 seconds or this sacred time, 90 minutes or whatever, and you're going to stay focused. You don't care if your phone goes off. You don't care if an alert happens. You don't care. You're going to stay really focused. And then obviously with the younger kids, you want to do that like 15 seconds at a time or 30 seconds at a time and build up by the end of the year to maybe 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever the number is. And then as you're older, it should be, you can stay very focused for 90 minutes to maybe that 3 hour mark. Now, if you talk to my pastor friends, they say their congregation cannot stay focused for more than 3 seconds. So maybe 90 minutes is a lot. But for me, I can really stay locked in for about 90 minutes or so.
Absolutely. Thank goodness surgeons can do that, right? That they've learned to do that for sure. Okay, Robert, you're up.
Yeah, next question is, what are strategies for balancing school, extracurriculars, and free time?
Hey, before you answer that, Gmo, what do you do, Robert, on that? Do you stay focused for 90 seconds, 90 minutes, 9 hours?
For me, I want to say stay focused for 90 minutes will be the most. It's hard for me to stay focused.
Hey, dock his pay starting tomorrow.
No.
Yeah. I think that, Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, Martin Luther, the priest, he was on a horseback ride with a fellow priest. And the fellow priest said to him, you're so disciplined, you're so able to do all this. And he said to him, I'm not nearly as disciplined as you think I am. And so they did an exercise where they said the Lord's Prayer, and Martin Luther was to say it. And the second his brain pinged to some other thought, he stopped and he got to hour, right? The very first word, because it just triggers. And so those blinders are so important, because without them, you will ping all over the place for sure.
Hey, by the way, I heard this in a sermon the other day. You probably knew it. You're a lot smarter than I am. Did you know that Martin Luther King Jr., that was not his real name?
I did know that.
Yeah, it's Michael King. And then he heard, his dad, Senior, heard Luther, the one you're talking about, preach. And he goes, I'm changing my name to that. And that's how it came about. You knew that?
I didn't know how that came about. I just know that Martin Luther was big in church reform, right?
Yeah.
And so even though he lived a long time ago, he would have been able to hear one of his sermons on that.
1934 is when
He heard that.
Yeah, because I was like, I thought I was getting punked or something, like it was April Fool's Day, but it was like 4 days ago. I was listening on the radio to a sermon, and I said, I never knew that.
Yeah, I had read that somewhere before.
Anyway,
I couldn't remember the other name, but I'd read that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, his name was Michael King Sr., and then he changed his name, which obviously changed his son's name.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, Robert, to derail the whole thing.
So no, not at all. So balancing school, extracurricular, and free time. I think we kind of talked about that at the very beginning, right? And so it's for me, it's not about balance; it's about harmony. And there's a program on on Netflix that's called Ricky, Nikki, Dickie, and Don, and they're kids, right? And one of the things that my grandkids watched today about them is that the girl decides that she wants to get straight A's. She wants to learn to play the tuba and be in the band, and she wants to play soccer. And so, what she's trying to do is juggle all that. And anytime somebody asks her, like her mom says, "Are you sure you're not doing too much?" She goes, "No, no, I want to do it all." And she does want to do it all. But the fact of the matter is, she's going to have to make choices, and she's going to have to decide what she really can handle and still give herself some time to just take a breath. And so it's interesting that they are that they share that with kids, because it's really about her trying to find harmony in her life. And that's the so what. So what, you watched it. I mean, it's funny. It does all those things. But the so what in that particular episode is that you need to set your priorities and don't overextend yourself, so that you don't do anything well. You cannot say, I put my best foot forward on this. Even if you didn't do all of them, you need to be able to feel that way with at least one of the things that you're doing. So I think that it's finding harmony more than anything, and it's being willing to adjust and being committed to making good choices for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that earlier. Like you said, I don't even like that balance. Somebody made a lot of money on that self-help stuff, but I just disagree with it. I think it is about harmony. I know something happened to one of my loved ones and I needed to stop everything. Then I'm going to go right there for 5 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, and do whatever I have to do to make sure that they get back to health, right? Versus other times, it may be the businesses that we have and that we run. We may have to go crazy in that kind of stuff, or everywhere in between. So I like harmony, and then, but I think you can harmonize too. So my son, who is a decathlete, which is 10 events over 2 days in track and field, he figured out how to, if you like that word balance, to be somewhat balanced in that over a 2-day period. But it was still in sections. It's not like you were running the 100 meters while you were long jumping and high jumping and the 1500 and the shot put no, you were able to do it one at a time. So I think that you can have harmony, and you can say, okay, I'm a one-man band or orchestra, and I'm going to go crazy on the trumpet. And that was, for Nick, it was the 100 meters. That was the first event. And then he puts that down. He's done with that. And then 30 minutes later, he's going to be long jumping, and he's going to go play the drums as hard as he can. So over a 10-hour day, which is what it wound up being, he only had to be on for maybe 30 minutes in total. Just like when you watch a football game, it's 3.5 hours. But if you were to actually look at the play from the snap of the ball till the tackle, it's like a couple minutes for the whole thing. So I think that as long as we're looking at it and we're saying that it's not really about balancing 57 things at once, we know about those, spinning plates. Eventually they're going to fall, right? If you do 57 of them. But I can spin the heck out of one for a very long time, and then go to maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I may have to go back to one or whatever. So I think it's just about understanding who you are and what's best for you in that. And if you like the word balance, congratulations and good luck to you on that. I just don't think that's realistic.
Thank you. Yeah. See your point. Okay, Robert, you're up.
Yes. How can I help youth identify and eliminate time wasting habits?
I think that young people, well, I think old people too. I think that people like to multitask, And I think that sometimes multitasking wastes time. Now, there are times when you are stirring the soup and you're going to unload the dishwasher and you're going to make a sack lunch, right? But if you're really working on something and you're really focused on something, if you're trying to multitask, I think that that's a distractor. And I think that it's easy to waste time. Another time waster for me is, let's say that I'm working on a project and I've thought it through to a certain point, and either I allow myself to be interrupted. I might do it all by myself, but I might have somebody else who does that. And instead of saying, I need 5 more minutes, I will allow that to interrupt me. And then I have to go backwards and figure out, now, where was I? What was I thinking? And so I've had to do the same thing twice, when if I would have just stuck to my guns and said, give me 5 more minutes and then I'll be able to talk, I wouldn't have had to do that. So I think that it's easy. It's also easy to, let's say that you have errands to run. If you don't plan those out and you just go from here to there to here to there, you can waste a lot of time driving in between. Whereas if you say, okay, I'm going to start at 7 and I know Walmart's opened at 7, so I'm going to go there first. And then I'm going to go to the dollar store because it opens at 8. And then I'm going to go right. And you go through those in such a way that you have organized around opening times or which things are close together. Right? I don't have to go very far out of my way. I can be here and I'm in one spot and I can take care of 5 different things. I think that also helps to not waste time. Because if you go from 3 miles apart, right, and you go back and forth, that's wasting a lot of time. So I think it's learning to organize yourself to be the most efficient you can be.
Don't talk about Virgil like that. We used to have an employee. He was like 6'9". He played professional basketball, and he'd get out. He would be out of gas a lot. And I'm like, Virgil, what? How come you're always out of?
Ooh, did we lose him?
I think we did.
Can you go back, because we lost you for a while?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I said that he used to ask me for like $5 here and $10 there, and he was a full-time employee when we were in the school system. I go, what do you need $5 and $10 for? He said, I ran out of gas, and I'm like, well, talk to me about your week. And what he would do is opposite of what you said. He wouldn't plan it out, right? Like Monopoly, I'm going to go visit Park Place, and beans on by Park Place, I'm going to pass go. And beans I'm going to pass go, I'm going to go hang out on Baltic. And then, right, he didn't do that. So what he would literally do, which was like 20 minutes away, he would drive downtown for one thing and then come back. And then he'd drive downtown the next day and then he'd come back. So I worked with him on being able to, time wasting habits. And in this case, gas wasting habits, right? And so I think that sometimes we don't plan ahead. So I say, begin with the end in mind and then reverse engineer it from there. And it's not that it always works out that way. Sometimes you're going to have to go to the store twice because you forgot eggs. It's just going to happen, right? But I think that you can plan it out beforehand. The other thing is, now that was just, talking about with him, but I think with kids, it's identification. And I think even with adults as well, but especially with youth, that to identify, and the best way to do that is have them journal. Have them journal their time for just 1 week. And I encourage adults to do this too. You're going to find out how much time you waste. It's a lot of time wasted. Just even if you didn't have the distractions, even if you didn't have your phone ringing or the alert or the notification, or you have to go to the restroom or whatever, you're going to find out that there's a lot of ways to get distracted. There's a lot of time wasting habits in there. So just like any other habit, what do you have to do? You have to overcome the habit, meaning that you have to replace the good habit with the bad habit. So if you can just stop the bad habit, you're going to be in a much better spot. But then if you can replace it on top of that with a good habit, now you're going to be in really a good spot. So if we go back to that sacred time, or we go back to the blinders for a horse, hey, I'm going to have this time where I'm going to stay focused. I'm going to take my phone and put it in the other room. I'm going to, not worry about, I'm going to make sure that the climate's set perfectly so I'm not hot, whatever the whatever is, because I could be hot and take off my shirt. Then I'm cold and I can put it back on. These seem like little things, but remember, little 10-second things add up to minute things, which add up to 30-minute things, which add up to an hour. Now all of a sudden you've wasted an hour and you've only been in work at 2 hours, so to speak, or doing whatever it is that you're going to do. And remember, with the kids, their attention span, or the youth, it's a lot less anyway, right? So they could be chugging along thinking about math, and then they go, oh, my video game last night, and so on and so forth. And you can hear it in their speech. So it's easy for them to get distracted. So start with 30 seconds or 15 seconds or 10 seconds, and then continue to build on it week by week and eliminate those time wasting habits.
For sure. All right, Robert, I think we have time for one more question.
Yes, yes, we do. Our last question would be, how can, oh no, what role does reflection play in improving time management?
Well, I think Brett just spoke to that with about reflection. He didn't call it that, but when you go back and you think about it, right? What did I do here? And creating that journal that he spoke of is a way for you to reflect, and you can go, "Whoa, I had no idea," right? That I was doing that. So reflection is how we learn. We have an experience, and we go back and we think about that, and we say, okay, this went well. This is what I like. This went well. This didn't go well. And so what might I do about that? Is that going to be something I just chuck altogether? Or no, I'm going to modify it this way and this way to see if I can make that work. And that's part of reflection, is saying, okay, this worked and I'm going to do more of it. This didn't work and I'm going to modify it, or I'm not going to do it at all. And then there are some times when you don't know which way you're undecided. And so then you want to work on that enough so that you can either let it be something you're going to get rid of or something that you're going to continue to do. But I think that if you don't think about your day, then you will make the same mistakes tomorrow. And so what we really want to do is think about that and decide, okay, this is what I could do to be more effective with my time. So I think you have time for a short answer, Brett.
Yeah, it looks like I got 2 minutes, so I'll keep it under 2 minutes. So we have a lot of things that we do within our organization, and we start with the review, the 1, 2, or 3 things that we think are important. Then we move to reflection, and I know this is a different question, but just to let you know, or different definitions, a better way to say that. So we do reflections as confirmation, tweaks, and ahas. So an aha means I've never thought about that before. A tweak is, yeah, I knew that, but it was a tweak to my thinking. And then a confirmation is, oh, I already knew that, but that was good and confirming. Then we also do a thing that we call debrief, which says, hey, what was my key learning today? How I use that in my personal life? How I use that in my professional life? And then again, timeframes and deadlines, which we talked about earlier. The other thing that we do is what we call diagnostics. What did we like and how we celebrate, right? What did we not like and what are we going to do differently, pivot or adjust? And then we have the undecideds, which we're going to question. The last thing I'll lead you with is there's these big companies out there like Google, and the analytics and or the tracking that they have are absolutely drivers to their business. So I think if we look at that reflection piece like that and all the other things that you can call those, they're huge to drive things ultimately forward and improving time management.
Thank you for that. So thank you for coming this evening and for spending some time with us with time management. Remember that a whole lot of stuff can happen in 5 minutes if you get focused. And so that way we can help to manage and save time as well. We hope that you have a great rest of your week. And again, thank you for